Dr. Astolfo Araujo, welcome to Underground.
Thank you very much.
It is a pleasure to have you. Underground features independently minded archaeologists, anthropologists, historians, and science renegades on controversial topics and themes. And I would say in your case, perhaps your ideas aren't particularly controversial in Brazil, but they certainly would be in North America. Uh, which illuminates, frankly, the difference in the archaeological establishments between the hemispheres and really kind of the lack of communication, which is something we're going to talk about. So you are a tenured professor at the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. You're a lecturer at the Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology, also at the university. You have a BA in geology from the Institute of Geosciences at Sao Paulo. You have a master's and a PhD in archaeology from the museum. You're a visiting graduate, or you were a visiting graduate student of anthropology and archaeology at the University of Washington, head of the laboratory for interdisciplinary studies on evolution, culture, and environment at the Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. Your main interests are linked to tropical geoarchaeology and the application of evolutionary epistemology to archaeological problems. I love that, and I'm very excited to talk to you about that. In addition to your work in South America, you've also worked in Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and elsewhere. And you are the author of many published works. You have been busy, my friend. What did I miss in your bio?
Oh, it's okay. That's pretty much this.
Did I cover it? Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, it's exciting to chat with you. You are the first person on Underground from, I think, from outside the United States, let alone an entirely different hemisphere. So I am very curious to see how your thoughts and ideas diverge. So as it relates to your thoughts and ideas and where they come from, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from originally?
Well, I was born here in Brazil, in São Paulo. So in São Paulo City, where the city where I live up today, I think is very different from the US, where everybody travels a lot and is born in one place and goes to another. But I am a São Paulo citizen. And then I entered the geology. I went to geology because, and this is perhaps interesting for the younger audience, is that sometimes you really don't know what you are going to do. So
Yeah.
I just went to geology because it seemed a very nice possibility of just traveling. So I had the faintest idea what geology was really like or was about. And then I spent my first 2 years in geology not knowing exactly where I was going to do. And then there was this archaeology class. Uh, and I started to go there to attend the class. And I discovered that there was Brazilian archaeology because like in the 80s, Brazilian archaeology was not very known, even for Brazilians. So I discovered, wow, there is archaeology in Brazil. I thought there was archaeology only in Egypt or something like this. So it's pretty
Right.
silly. Yeah, amazing. Like how naive a person can be, when you are 17, 18-year-old. Like so. And then that was a whole new word for me. And I approached the professor, and asked him, do you think I can enroll, like I can become an archaeologist, but do you think it's possible because I'm from geology? And he said, no, geology is great. It's one of the best things you can do to be an archaeologist. And I was like, oh, really? I thought I should be in history or I don't know, but no, it's okay. You can come. So he was very inviting. He invited me. And then the rest is history. Like I continued, started to participate in the archaeological excavations, and then I realized that indeed what I was learning, because this was together with the geology course. It was together. I was an intern in archaeology and making my geology uh, university course. And so I started to perceive that indeed it was really useful, because a lot of stuff I was seeing in the university, in my department, was useful for archaeology, and many of my colleagues didn't have a clue about the stuff that was going
Yeah.
on, because they usually came from anthropology or from history, so they didn't know a lot about the the sediments and things like this. So it was a nice start.
Um, so okay, so it's interesting to hear you say that, because you came into the discipline with a multidisciplinary perspective. You came in with a background in geology, and I think that's actually helpful. One of the things that I've noticed quite a bit in through my 25 years of professional work, are those people who come in from the outside that have a slightly different perspective. Quite often, the ones who are able to see things differently and provide a level of insight that's hard to achieve when you've been just sort of blinders on and focused strictly on sort of institutional or establishment archaeology. So I think there's a great value in that. My background is in philosophy, and so I know we're going to talk
Wow,
about epistemology here,
great.
and that I
Wow.
think has also been helpful in terms of just thinking a little bit about how we know what we know, and how much confidence you can assign to it. Um, so let me ask you this: have you always been interested in the peopling of the Americas topic?
Not always. That's another interesting thing, how your interests change.
Huh.
So in the beginning, I was just interested in more like lithic analysis and some geoarchaeological problems and things like this. And then I went to work. I was invited by Walter Neves. Walter Neves is I would say, the leading uh, physical anthropologist in Brazil, and he's pretty well known worldwide, because
Very well known.
he yeah, he proposed like the Luzia skeleton not was not Asian. No, didn't have the same physical features as a Native Americans, or the today Native Americans, and things like this. So it was very um, it was very interesting. So he invited me to be part of his team as a geoarchaeologist.
Ah.
And then I started to enter into this people of the Americas issue, and became more and more interested. So it was really by invitation that I started to work with this.
Well, that's incredible that you got to work with Dr. Neves. As a young man, even before I went to graduate school, there was a grand total of one archaeologist in South America who I was familiar with, and it was Walter. And
Oh,
he
yeah.
was making international headlines, decades ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
we'll touch on some of that. I mean, for me, it was he talked about the Fuegians, which is still just such a fascinating topic. But so let me ask you this: what are some I don't know if we need to talk about epistemological differences per se, but I want to talk a little bit about that perspective thing where, here in the United States and North America, we see a certain cadence of change. We have a certain expectation for the way, to your point, sort of the evolution um, in a certain direction, not necessarily towards complexity, but in a certain direction seems to be um, widely accepted. Uh, Now you're saying something, it's different. There's greater continuity. What else are you seeing? What are some of the significant differences, say hallmarks, in South America versus those that you're aware of in North America?
Yeah. Well, I will talk more of Brazil, that we usually call Eastern South America, to not be too parochial, to say, oh,
Sure.
the archaeology in Brazil, then some people don't know exactly the size of the country. They can imagine that it's kind of small. So I'm talking about a tiny portion of South America. So I say Eastern South America, so the person can have an idea that's a big chunk of the continent. And actually, Brazil is 48% of South America. So
Yeah,
it's a
very
large part
good.
of that
It's
continent.
a good sample size.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so what happens is this part of South America that I know better is that we have, since the beginning of the Holocene, or the very end of the Pleistocene, you have a lot of archaeological sites appearing out of nowhere. And they are already very, very different between them. You see, like, the huge differences in lithic technology. Huge. So that's weird.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
like
it
North
is.
America. It's not like North America that now you have Clovis. It seems that the guys appear also from from like you interview Bruce. Bruce can talk of course he's talking about this, so we will not delve into
Sure.
this.
Yeah.
But like, at least you have some kind of, you have Clovis and then Folsom. I know it's not that simple. It has a lot of things to be discovered still, but in Brazil, like, it is like you have like Clovis, and then another thing totally different from Clovis, and another thing totally different, and taking huge areas already since the onset, since the 12.5 thousand years ago. You already have these three, at least, actually much more. But I use these three just to as a reference so people can understand better. Um, I have some map. I think you can show on
Sure.
a slide that it would be more or less um, slide 7. I can, like, there is a paper that I wrote in 2015, and then you
Okay.
have this map of Brazil that shows these areas, and it's written Itaparica, Lagoa Santa, and Umbu. These are the
Wow.
names of three lithic traditions that are absolutely different from each other. And the areas are vast. Like,
Yeah.
is the size of each of these areas is like the size of several European countries. So yeah,
And all these lithic traditions, do they appear around 10,500 in the start of the Holocene?
yeah. They pretty much have the same ages from the start. 12.5. Lagoa Santa is 12.5. I'm talking about calibrated
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
present.
Okay.
So Lagoa Santa is 12.5, and Itaparica there is some ages close to 13, but what we can show the audience about the differences. Like on slide 9, you can show the Lagoa Santa industry,
Okay.
and that's
Yeah.
it. That's it. It's just simple stuff.
Okay.
It's flaked quartz, flaked hyaline quartz, and a bit of flint, also very simple flaking in
Okay.
the earlier layers, and then they kind of give up on flint and they just flake quartz for thousands of years, and that's it. No formal artifacts, and these guys were very well, like, their culture endured for 8,200 years. So
Wow.
it's not that they were morons. It's not that they didn't know how to make a living, so they were very bad in flea napping or something like this. They were not very interested in flea napping. That's
Yeah.
the impression we have. No,
So
and
so
and
this
and they were
culture group disappeared. This tradition disappeared around 4,000 years ago.
more or less, yeah. I wouldn't. I like to say we can be positive that they really disappeared, there is a lot of archaeology to be done still in Brazil, but they disappeared from the Lagoa Santa region, let's say.
Okay.
Perhaps they moved away and continued for a while in some other place. But at least from Lagoa Santa, that is central Brazil, they pretty much disappeared. So
Okay.
we can go again to slide 11. It will show again the map.
Yeah.
Then, so Lagoa Santa is the blue the blue circles.
Yeah.
And now I will show you the Itaparica, that are these guys here in northeast Brazil and going all the way to central Brazil. And
Okay.
then let's show slide 12 a bit of what these guys were doing. They were
Okay.
contemporaneous to Lagoa Santa.
Okay.
The only formal artifacts they flaked are these limaces, these slugs. Limace is a French term for slug, because it seems a slug. It's a plano-convex. Like you have a flake, you have a flat face here, and then you have like this
Yeah.
thing, like this form.
You're
So
saying
think about a
slug,
slug.
right? Like a
Yeah,
slug? Is that?
yeah, yeah.
Were they knocked off of a core, like a charismatic core, or how are they getting the uniface
Most of
side?
them by a large flake. Started with a large flake, and
Okay.
then so it's possible that these are the end products. Like they were using the flakes, retouching, and then this is the slug is the end
I see.
product. Like, but in the end of the life of the artifact,
Got
when
it.
the artifact was
Okay.
used until it worn out. So it's a possibility. So generally a large flake that was used. In
Okay.
in other in another thing that happened not so common was to take a pebble and flake it unifacially, so the audience can understand that, like, unifacially means I flake only towards only one direction, only one face of
Yeah.
the stone is subject to flaking. The other face is not flaked. So that means unifacial scrapers. That's the idea.
I mean,
So
what's
these guys
interesting
were
about this group,
contemporaneous.
what's interesting about this, if I can point out, is that while it's limited in terms of the number or types of tools that they clearly have, um, a long-standing and fairly controlled flaking tradition. I mean, there's I've been looking at some of these examples here. There were a lot of flakes removed from the initial preform, or whatever you want to call it, the initial material. So they had the ability to control their flaking and do, looks like, relatively fine work, except they chose to really just focus on a certain limited number of tools in the kit.
Yeah, yeah, and this is crazy because they are contemporaneous to the Lagoa Santa guys, and in fact, in one of the rock shelters we excavated in Lagoa Santa, there was a single limace in the bottom. So these Staparica guys, I don't know, went for one night in the rock shelter,
Right.
dropped this slug, never came back, and the Lagoa Santa guys occupied over it and then stood for thousands of years. But
Okay.
these Itaparica guys continued to do their flaking in an adjacent area. So they were taking part of Brazil as their territory, while Lagoa Santa guys were taking another part of Brazil as their territory. So you can see really territories. It's not just
Yeah.
a matter of, oh, it's very definite. It's crazy stuff.
So just
And
real quick, if you may have said it already, but just for my clarification, did this culture group also have a similar, very lengthy duration?
half, only 4,200
Okay.
years.
All right. That's a good run. It's a good run.
Yeah, it's a good run. And then now we can perhaps go back to the map, to the 11,
Yeah.
slide 11. Now I will talk about these southern people here,
Hmm.
Umbu. And
Yeah.
then what these guys are doing is in slide 15.
Wow. That looks a little
Ta-da!
more familiar.
That's it. Also contemporaneous, but they were southern people. So at the same time, you have these three distant groups, and we know that's more than three. Okay. But at least these three different groups occupying different regions of the Eastern Brazil, doing totally, absolutely different stuff.
Wow.
So what this means, like, to me, means that they have such different cultural norms. So this is something we have to think about. It's not, you can use the word choice. They choose to do this or they choose to do that. Like in lato sensu, like in a general term, you can use the word choice, but it's much more than choice. I think it's a very strict cultural norms operate.
Hmm.
You just not choose to do these things. You have to learn, and you pass this to your descendants. And I will tell you why I have this approach, why I think this is so.
Okay. Let me ask before we jump into that.
Uh,
This. Looking at these silhouettes, this is much more familiar to an archaeologist from North America. I mean, some of these points, they look like archaic points.
yeah,
The if you were to tell me, uh, one of these points was found in North America and dated till 12,500 years ago, I'd be pretty surprised. That would be very, very early for this type of form. Obviously, they have basal reduction, and we know North America is at least, we were educated about Junius Bird and Fells Cave and the Fishtail points, which were obviously fluted points. Are these a part of that tradition? Is there any? No.
no,
Okay. Well, so would
no,
that be a fourth um, lithic tradition that is present further south?
yeah. The fishtail would be a fourth tradition, but fishtail is a bit earlier than this.
I see.
The chronology we have for Uruguay suggests that fishtail is before these guys, because
I see.
this goes up to Uruguay, as we show on the map. Goes to Argentina, and Uruguay is not just a Brazilian thing.
I see.
But you see, if you go about, like, please go to slide 16, and we will take a look at the chronology.
Okay.
And when you
13,000
see,
years of continuity.
yeah, oh, no. So this, I thought, when I started to work with this, I thought this is obviously just an artifact. Like it has to do with people putting everything that is a point into the same basket and saying it's a tradition. So that was my approach. Like, it's impossible to have such a long continuity in the archaeological record, or in the modern human archaeological record. It's kind of impossible. So what we did was, we took one site that had a good chronology and studied the points from the technological and from the morphometric, or like the shape, using a high end statistics to do this,
Yeah.
because we were like, we will prove this is nonsense. We will prove that actually these points are very different, that they cannot be put in the same basket, and this continuity cannot be like this, and things like this. But so you can show in slide 17, we have this Garibaldino site that was excavated in the 80s. And here we have the ages. So we have these ages, 5,700 years of continuity in the stratigraphy. And this means 287 generations, more or less. And yeah, and what happened at this site is that we didn't find any statistical difference between the shapes. The guys were doing the same shapes at the points from the beginning of the occupation at 10,900 until the end of the occupation of 5,000 years. The same
Unbelievable.
shapes were present, the technology was the same, and the only conclusion we can take from this is that they were pretty much making the same thing. Now, I don't
Right.
know. We have more data to say that it's 13,000. Perhaps not. But for this site, that is the only one we have a good chronology and good stratigraphy. For this site, these guys are also doing the same thing for
So let me ask
5,000 years.
that's remarkable. But let me ask you this. I mean, looking at the 4 points that you have as examples here, I mean, they're morphologically quite distinct.
Yes.
You know, some have indented bases, others don't. Others have, you know, significant shoulders. Some don't. You know, some seem like they may have been intentionally serrated, where
Yes. Yes.
others are not. I mean, were they making within any given period of time, like within a you know, a lifetime, within a generation, were all of these point types also present? Is that your understanding that it was they made all of these points through the entire
Yes.
13,000 years?
Yes. The only we have this published also, and then you can put the links so people can read by themselves all the statistics, all the stuff, and etc. But what happened is that you have differences across time. For instance, the first point on the left, the indented base. The indented base becomes more frequent in the later phase
I see.
as the serrated. The
Yes.
serration also becomes more frequent, but you find them in the bottom of the stratigraphy also.
I mean, that has implications, you know, for North American archaeology as well. You know, because we obviously talk about seriation, which is to your point earlier, this idea of sort of a linear progression of change. Um, and we, you know, you get a couple of good dates at good sites, and those are your type sites, and we'll use those dates, you know, forevermore. There's a couple of exceptions to that here in the Southeast I'm familiar with, where you'll look like Simpson and Swanee points, and you may not, we really don't have a great sense of whether they post date or predate Clovis. Probably post date is what most people say. But I mean, this has potentially significant ramifications to the way we interpret sites all across the hemisphere. If that kind of behavior was happening in other parts of the hemisphere.
Yeah, it's possible that the thing is that I think in the US or North America, generally speaking, the seriations and the point types and it's they work great because probably that's what was happening. People were really changing the shapes of the points. I believe so. The interesting thing is that this is not happening in South America but the other thing is this longevity of the lithic industries. So I don't know if it has implications for North American archaeology. I think we have a lot of data that has implications for North America. But in this case specifically, I don't know if it has implications for North America, but I think it has implications for us to think about we as humans,
Yeah.
because we tend to think that humans, like a hallmark of mankind or humankind, is inventiveness and fast cultural change. And what we see here in South America is not this.
Okay.
And these guys were as smart as anybody in the face of the earth. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, fair enough. As to your point, I was thinking perhaps we should reconsider some of our chronologies as a result of this, but maybe our dates are strong and the seriation is accurate, and we're just looking at a very different type of phenomena in South America, which is equally as profound a realization. So obviously, there's a lot of questions that come up in thinking about this. I think the first question is, and perhaps you touched on it already, but rather than saying why would they have stayed so consistent? I mean, I think we can talk a little bit about that, but I think for me, the interesting thing is um, how, with such proximity to these other culture groups, did they not interact more? Do we not see more of a blending over time? I mean, that's some serious continuity, regional continuity. That I mean, I can't think of any other analog anywhere where I've seen that kind of staying power. How would you address that?
Think I think that when we draw that dashed line on the map, of course that it's an interpretation. I think a lot of work has to be done, and perhaps what I'm showing this map is like kind of core areas, and it's possible that you have some blending. Uh, I don't know, but what we know is that these lines they tend to they are connecting dots that mean sites that really have these characteristics, these internal characteristics.
Yeah.
So it's possible that more research will show areas of some kind of interface and etc. As I mentioned, one of the sites had this Itaparica Limas underneath the Lagoa
Yeah.
Santa, but
Okay.
doesn't mean that they interacted. No, means that perhaps a guy went there and then the other guys came. So it's hard to.
Yeah.
But anyway, in general terms, I think the picture will not change a lot, much more than this. I think that there really is these different things happening. But when we get to São Paulo State, and
Okay.
well, I don't have a map of São Paulo State, but São Paulo State in the map you are showing, it's SP. It's the state that is where there is written Ribeira Chalmidens.
Yeah.
You
Let's
have
see.
the yeah
Yeah.
SP. Yeah, this is São Paulo State where I work nowadays. I
Okay.
work a lot in São Paulo State. Um, we see bifacial points like these points that could be called umbu, but now we are not calling them umbu anymore. They are different from the southern ones. So we have probably another group of point making people that didn't make the same shapes of the southern ones. So we have a differentiation uh, with ages that reach 10,000. So they could be like these guys coming from the south and changing a bit, or they could be a different group making different points. I don't know. But we also have throughout São Paulo State, we have lots of people who didn't fake points at all. So like some microcosmos, like you have a single state where when you see a map of the state with everything plotted, you see a richness of lithic industries. It's crazy.
Yeah. I
Perhaps
mean, let's
because it's, so,
go ahead, please.
perhaps because São Paulo State is in the interface between biomes. So it's a kind of
Yeah.
an area that people coming from central Brazil where you have savanna-like environment, people coming from the coast where you have rainforest, people coming from the south where you have the grasslands. So you have to think about Brazil as like every kind of biome you can imagine, because the latitude is very large, no?
Yeah.
Like perhaps you can show slide 6. Then you have Brazil and the US, so people can have an idea of the
Yeah.
latitude. So it would
That's
be
a great
latitude
slide.
between Mexico City and Edmonton in terms of latitude. So
Incredible.
you can
Well,
have
look,
all kinds
I
of
think
biomes.
yes, I can only imagine, and of course we know about your incredible rainforest there as well. Um, okay, so it's very interesting. It's almost difficult to wrap one's head around this, but I'm gonna kind of summarize a little bit what we've
Yes.
discussed.
Uh-huh.
We're talking primarily so far about eastern Brazil, and you have calibrated dates 12,500 years ago, three very distinct lithic traditions that are butting up against one another, and they have this incredible continuity. So, what that leads, my mind thinking again from sort of a North American perspective, and again, looking at this, addressing the question of peopling of the Americas, you know, we have three distinct cultures who've obviously have some antecedents somewhere. There was hundreds, likely many thousands of years of cultural tradition leading up to the what we're now seeing quite obviously in the early Holocene expressing itself as these culture groups. So you've got at the terminal Pleistocene, basically multiple independent and distinct culture groups already in South America. That doesn't conform particularly well to the Clovis first model. Let's go there.
Not at all. Not at all.
Got it.
So I will let's talk a bit about chronology. Slide 21, please. And then on 21 we have we have these curves are the number of radiocarbon ages. It's called the summit probability curve. So for the general public to have an idea, is like the more ages you have in a given interval, the higher is the peak. So what we
Okay.
have here is that Clovis. So the ages for Clovis they are all concentrated in a tiny peak, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
Between 12.7, 13.2, something like this. Now on the left, we have Lagoa Santa. Okay, it's post-Clovis. Okay, it is. But, it's pretty close. And
Yeah.
it's like many, 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 many thousand miles down south. Then
Yeah.
you have Folsom, on the left. And then you have the Umbu tradition on the right, no? And then you
Yeah.
have
Let me point something out about these maps, about these graphs. The graphs of they don't have the same starting point. Clovis, on the far left, starts at 14,000.
yes. This
And you
is
have
important to note.
because it
Yeah,
looks like they're kind of off further younger in time, but they're really
yeah,
not. You have
yeah.
Umbu overlapping with Clovis.
Yes. So I apologize. The figure could be better, but yeah, the audience.
It's okay.
Yeah,
I want the
yeah,
audience to be aware, like really look
yeah,
at this carefully and look at those dates, because I think it
yeah.
makes your point even better when you
Sure,
consider that. So I'm sorry to
sure,
interrupt, but finish your thought
sure.
there.
No, you're right. And take a look at the Itaparica ages.
Yeah,
No,
it's earlier than
so
Clovis.
yeah, but okay. So all the time this appears like somebody would say the date is not good, etc. So I will not delve into the age, but the pattern of the age is strong enough. Now, even if you throw away the earliest Itaparica ages and say they are contaminated and all that thing, take a look at the rest of the pattern, and you see that it's kind of hard, to imagine these guys going south so fast.
Yes.
It's really kind of hard. And also, not only this, but like take a look, like you can like slide 22, just to graphically show the audience like if this is possible. No,
That's,
so
I mean, the lower ones with Umbu,
yeah, yeah,
possibly
yeah,
there could be a connection there because
yeah,
they're bifaces, and
yeah,
I'd have to look
yeah,
closely at the flaking scars. But yeah, your point is well made.
yeah.
There
Well,
there doesn't seem to be much connection on the top two.
yeah. Like Bruce Bradley, that you already interviewed, that is a very a friend of mine. Bruce came to Brazil several times. He knows the Umbu industry as like he's now one of the experts in Umbu industry also. Not only
Uh-huh.
Clovis, but you can call Bruce an expert in Umbu technology also.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with Clovis.
Okay. All right.
Nothing to do.
I'll defer to Bruce on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so what happens is that uh, in slide 23, just to make it graphic also, so people can understand better, you have these models of how long it would take for people to go from the plains, the North American plains, and to reach the tip of South America or even the central Brazil. We have these models like Barton and colleagues 2004. They used real archaeological data. So they use the ages, the radiocarbon ages, the age determinations of the sites, and figure out the rate of dispersion into the northern Europe when the glaciers melted away. So that there was
Uh-huh.
a new landscape, and these Paleolithic guys, no people, not the guy, it's Paleolithic people. They were going north because the landscape was free of ice, and the rates are 0.9 to 0.3 kilometer per year. That makes a lot of sense because you are not going in some direction. Oh, we have to go north. No, it's just a matter of the population is increasing. You have more people, and you have like a village fission. When you have like generally more than 30 people, to use the ethnographic models, these villages, they start to split because of like people don't get along. The hunting is bad for
Yeah.
several reasons. So
Uh-huh.
so you have to have this natural growth rate, a population growth rate, and people spreading in every direction. Well, but the direction where they came. So it's not a north thing. It's
Yeah.
a west, east, northwest, northwest, northeast, and so it makes sense. This very low rate of dispersion, 0.9, 0.3 kilometer per year.
Uh-huh.
So the second authors, Webb and Rindos, they use it. They made the same thing for Sahu. That's Sahu. What would be what today is Tasmania, New Guinea, and Australia together when the sea level was lower.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then they have these rates from 2 to 3 kilometers per year, but the people were using boats. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then you have Fido, that is a US archaeologist,
Sure.
and
Yeah. Still
and
refining on.
he was using this Thule expansion. That Thule were the no, the
Yeah.
Eskimos.
Sure.
Okay, you know, I think the audience knows
Yeah.
about better than me.
They're the forebears to
The
the
forebear to the
Inuit.
Inuit. Yes. 16 to 21 kilometers per year. Again, using both, my friends.
Yeah.
No? Then Webb and Lindos used it in the same paper. They calculated 7 to 10 kilometers per year for a computational model for South America. That I think is off, too
Yeah.
fast. But then you have Haynes, that is a very well-known
Sure. Yeah, Vance
U.S.
Haynes.
archaeologist, and he proposed 2,270 kilometers per year. So why this? Because you have to fit.
So that's 2000. So there's a period in there as opposed to a comma, but that would be 2,270 kilometers
Per year.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Per year.
Decimal point, I should say. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a long, that you're busy. You're hustling.
Sorry. Yeah, in Brazil you use a dot instead of comma. Yes, it's 2,000. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's 200. Not
they were on the move.
Not 2.2. It's 2,000. Okay. Why this? Because it's the urge to fit any data into your model.
Yeah.
So, like from the scientific standpoint, I think it's shaky. No, I'm being very polite. I think it's shaky.
Yeah.
Fiedel in another paper says like Clovis traversing the ice-free corridor. I believe you interview people talking about the ice-free corridor, or I think I will not delve into the ice-free corridor.
The traditional Clovis first model, Laurentide, Cordilleran ice, path.
Yes. So the audience can know like there was this ice-free corridor, and so he said, oh, people can traverse the 2,000 kilometers in 80 days, 25 kilometers a day. No, wow, where are the pregnant women, little children, and the elder? They would be left.
Yeah.
They would like, this is like marathon runners, like very fit people making 25 kilometers a day and living all the week. No, so I don't know how they reproduced it in the end. No?
Yeah.
That's weird. And then you can say, oh, okay, this is old stuff. And then you have a paper by Fiedel right now, 2022. He's saying the same thing. 24 kilometers per day in 400 years. You can go, Clovis can reach the tip of South America.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, it's like you go in a straight line towards south. Why? Because like your religion says you have to do that.
The weather's nicer. Yeah, but then why wouldn't they stop in Panama? No, I think your point is well made. I think what we're looking at, and I don't have enough, this is interesting data right here, but it seems to me it's relatively obvious that there were populations here in the Pleistocene, and they were hard to see. And then come the radical changes at the late Pleistocene, early Holocene. For one reason or another, they become more visible. I think they repositioned following the Younger Dryas, and they reestablished themselves. And then we, probably for a variety of environmental reasons, are now able to, we see the concentrated, those materials are now in more predictable, maybe that's the way to put it, they're more predictable environments now than
could be
wherever in the world they were spending their time during the Pleistocene. But I mean, how do you explain? I mean, your point is well made. Look, people were here. It seems obvious. I know you've got Pedro Florada and Santa Elena and other types of very early sites. And we even have Monte Verde that goes back, at least 15 and maybe more. So you've got these sites. Clearly, there were people there. And based on what I'm hearing from you, there were, if we want to say before Clovis or pre-Clovis, culture groups in South America. But it seems like there were many, based on the data that you're showing, or there was a minimum of 3. And if you're saying there's no connection between Clovis and Umba, then you also have the fishtail So you have at least 4, and if you throw Monteverde into the mix too, 5 culture groups during the Pleistocene in South America,
No,
maybe
yeah,
more.
yeah, many more, because I'm not an expert in Argentinian archaeology, but you have not like not very very old sites in Argentina, but you have fishtail, for instance, in Argentina. But after fishtail, you have other by point types that are not related to our umbu throughout Argentina also. And then you have Chile, and you have pretty old 15,000 year old sites in Chile also. No, not only Monteverde. I mean, you have younger sites, but also culturally distinct. And then you have also very early Holocene, old sites, early Holocene sites in Peru, Bolivia, you name. So it's a lot of different stuff all over.
Well, just for fun, since we're talking about it, there's Lindoza Cave, the rock art in Colombia that has the depictions of extinct Pleistocene megafauna, which is phenomenal as well.
Yeah, yeah.
This is this is quite an array of very very early sites. I mean, I guess the question is, how do you explain it? Who, when, how, and why?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the main things that can help explain is really the onset of the Holocene. So for the audience to know, like the Holocene is the last 12,000, like it varies a bit. Let's say the last 12,000 years, and the climate became much way more predictable and way more milder than it
Yeah.
was. And
Yeah.
we, as biological beings, we can thrive, or we can really go down the hill depending on this kind of stuff. So so you have this together with this, when the climate starts to be warmer, that is the Holocene where we live now. The sea level started to raise a lot, because the sea level was 100 meters, 100 and up to 120 meters below
Wow.
today.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so for the Brazilian coast, at least, this is a huge difference. Like Brazilian territory would be way larger. Like from São Paulo, where I live, if I stay on the coast today, looking at the sea, I have to imagine a huge plane going into the ocean more
Yeah.
than 100 kilometers from what is now.
Amazing. Yeah.
So can you
Yeah.
imagine the amount of sites that are underwater?
Yeah.
Like, it's something unimaginable. We don't know. Huh? So
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I'm in
this is,
Florida, and we have a similar situation here. Florida
yeah,
during certainly during the last glacial maximum was at least twice its current landmass, and perhaps more.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a
So
big
it's
part of the
possible
picture we're missing.
Yeah, so it's possible that what we see in the beginning of the Holocene is like not only more people, but people being pushed back because the
Yeah.
ocean was eating up the land. So I think it's another like the two things that we can think together to explain this phenomenon that is that really has not a lot more of not many explanations,
Yeah.
because what we can say, like guys like Clovis guys came running like 24, 25 kilometers per day, and then they started to do crazy stuff, like like it's kind of, it's interesting from a point of view of literature, but art, like you can imagine all kinds of scenarios. It's nice, but from the scientific standpoint, it's really doesn't
It's not a very
doesn't stand.
practical explanation. That's for
Yeah.
sure. So, let's talk a little bit about some of the early. We can get into the early sites. We I guess I'm a little reluctant to dive too deep into them, to keep our, to stay within our time frame here of this conversation. But I know I've had some conversations with you, well, earlier before our interview, and also with Steve Holland and others who have talked a bit about alternative peopling models. In our, North America, we have, Asiatic populations coming over through the Bering Land Bridge. There's, this idea of a Eurasian, possibly Solutrean population coming over the North Atlantic, or possibly all the way past Lake Baikal and over through the ice free quarter. And that's kind of it. Now, I did talk to Steve Holland, and he talked about the Mastodon site in San Diego. And he believes that that's 130,000 years old. And he was arguing, not passionately, but he's saying this could be Denisovan. It could be a different, within the Homo genus, but a different species that was using bone tools. And so therefore we don't see a lot of lithic materials, but that there could have been either an archaic Homo sapien or Denisovan or Neanderthal population here 130,000 years ago. What he calls it, the American Paleolithic. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation Walter Neves. Walter Neves, my memory is that he was talking about the Fuegians in Tierra del Fuego having craniomorphological similarities to the Australian Aborigines, which blew me away. I know that you've got some different ideas down there in terms of who came and when. And can we unpack that a little bit? What are you seeing in the archaeological record there? Which direction are you headed?
Well, I think that working so many years with Walter, I had to read all his stuff for sure. And one thing that is important is to notice that these things, what Walter Neves discovered about measuring the Brazilian skulls, for instance, and seeing that they didn't fit very well with the present day people, uh, has nothing to do with I want to make some fuzz about, I want to be known internationally, etc. He was just a regular guy that was measuring skulls, but and he had a different approach because he was using very very top statistics, things that the previous physical anthropologists were not using. So he discovered these patterns using top end statistics. And so what do you do when you discover this kind of stuff? Like, you
Right.
pretend you are not seeing this?
Yeah.
No, like, if you are a honest person, if you are a honest academic person, you will try to publish because it's important to publish. So this is what happened to Walter Neves. Now, going to Pedra Furada, for instance, Miedi Guidon went there because of the rock art. She was a young archaeologist working in a place that, like, nobody wanted to go. Very harsh conditions. You cannot imagine. Like, Piauí, even today, is kind of hard. Can you imagine this in the 70s? So
Yeah.
she was up to rock art, and she started to excavate the rock shelter to see if she could date the rock art, if there was signals of the pigments. That's that's only this. And she went down and down and down and down and down, and she had French money to date, so she sent samples and samples and samples and samples. That's the story. And then, no, you have these very old ages, and that's it. You have to publish. Okay, and then about the artifacts, I will talk about this in a moment. Santa Helena, that is a third case, the same thing. French team came to Brazil just because of the rock art. The same idea. They excavated Santa Helena just because of rock art. They were not interested in all the people of the Americas. No, No, not whatsoever. But they dug, and they found very weird stuff that I show you, show the audience. So this is important to say that I think like nobody's trying to make a fuss and be internationally known. On the contrary, because like it's pretty hard to publish this kind of stuff. It will be
Sure.
much easier to publish, as we see in Brazil, rice and beans. Rice and beans,
Yeah.
like the main Brazilian food is rice and beans. So the
Right.
everyday thing is rice and beans.
Yeah.
You publish a rice and beans paper, and it will be accepted in Latin American antiquity, whatever. No problem. You don't have this kind of you don't need to make this kind of fuss for nothing. So this being said, I think all the discussion about the peopling of the Americas is not going well, and I will tell you why. This year, in April, I went to the Denver, the SAA Congress, Society for American Archaeology Congress in
Yeah.
Denver, and like, I think the mainstream archaeology is, again, it's not Clovis first because it's untenable, but it's what I will call short chronology. Like people entered the Americas at 18,000 years. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry because you are missing so much information. Like you are taking away, throwing away. Sorry, you are throwing away so much information, so many published stuff, in English, in peer-reviewed papers. It's not not internet stuff, blog or something. And
Yeah.
like you don't take this into consideration. I think it's weird. That's the word I will use. I think it's weird.
Yeah.
So if you want, I can talk a bit about the sites kind of fast, just to show you
Yeah. I
the main
just want
points.
to sort of encapsulate a little bit of what you're saying, because again, we've talked about this before. There's great research that's been done all in both northern and southern Americas that shows that we have sites that are very, very early, considerably earlier than 18,000 years ago. But what you're seeing when you come to North America to the SAA is that there's this short chronological sort of establishment, and that anything beyond 18,000 years is looked at with wild skepticism. It's almost immediately dismissed. If you don't mind, let's go back to, because I know there's some interesting ideas that you and some of your colleagues in South America have relative to the peopling. And we talked about a couple of the sites. Do you want to talk about Pedra Furada, or do you want to talk about Santa Helena?
Yeah, let's talk about Pedra Furada really fast.
Okay.
Slide 24, so people can have an idea.
Yeah,
of
this is a very
site.
important site. Okay. So this is the
Yeah.
site you said that they were originally going to look at the rock art, the French team, and then they started digging, and then their orientation changed a bit.
Yeah, actually, Pedra Furada was a Brazilian archaeologist. Was Nied Guidon. She's the French descendant, but she's Brazilian.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So yeah, she started, and after some years, she left Fabio Parenti, that was the guy who really excavated most of the site, was in charge of the excavation. Fabio Parenti is an Italian archaeologist.
Okay.
And so you can see in the picture, it's a very high cliff, like, I don't know, 100 meters high. It's really high. And the whitish part of the cliff is composed of pebbles and cobbles. And the darker part underneath is sandstone. So it's true. You have a lot of cobbles falling. So it's true. These cobbles can fracture. Okay, no problem. No problem about this. It is important to be cautious. I totally agree. It
Yes.
is important to be cautious. So on the next slide, that is the 25, it's just to show the stratigraphy and all the ages. Okay, so they go up to the limit of radiocarbon, and on 26, some examples of the artifacts that were found. They are crude, few flakes, few like
Pebble
the
tools.
pebble tools, very crude, no problem. But it's not only this. You have structures also. Next slide is 27. You have structures. Structures, yeah. This is all published now.
Yeah.
Fabio Parenti published his PhD dissertation. So lots of materials. Everything is on the internet, on ResearchGate. Anyone can download Fabio Parenti's whole thesis. It's in French. Well, you just copy paste and see on the Google Translator. But the plates, all the plates are there, all these structures and etc. and so on, pictures and etc. What happened with this site is when they started to have these really old ages, they invited a lot of archaeologists from all over the world, and in this team were some U.S. archaeologists like David Meltzer, James Adovazio,
Sure.
and gosh, his name just went away, but like I know him very well, but his name I thought Dillehay, for God's sake. Dillehay. So they were there, and what they did was that they thought the artifacts were not artifacts. Okay.
Okay.
They picked up some stones that were in the bottom of a chute. Like you have the water running on the top of the massif, and you have like a cascade when it rains a lot. So you have these chutes where the rock is falling. So they went to this pile of rocks and picked up some and said, they are the same as the artifact. And they published this in, I don't remember where, Latin American Antiquity Corp, debunking the site. Of course, they had some paragraphs said, "Oh yeah, when it is published, we need more data and etc. etc." But as it stands, it's not a site. This caused a major commotion, and there were archaeologists from other parts of the world, like Badnarik, that is Australian guy. Well, Australian archaeologists like me, I can be put in the same niche. I worked all my career with very simple artifacts. By chance, every place I worked, it was just very simple artifacts. So the Badnarik was used to very simple artifacts. This is important when you come from a setting that your idea of Pleistocene thing is a Clovis point. You think that everything else is natural. You think there's no human brain. No human can flake like this because this is below human. No. So Badnarik was there, and Badnarik went away. He wrote his paper saying, yes, it's okay. They are it's artifacts. It's human made. No, but like who is Badnarik? No, like in the international audience, like Meltzer, Adovazio, and Dillehay were much more influenced much more. Yeah. So what happened? After all these years is that on the top of this, people discovered that capuchin monkeys in the region they bash rocks in order to break nuts. So
Okay.
that was the capuchin monkeys made the artifacts in Pedra Furada. It was not humans, it was capuchin monkeys. Fidel, the famous Fidel, is
Stuart
one of the
Fidel, yeah.
guys that like he went like yes, capuchin monkeys, you know. Okay, but there is a recent paper that I will put here in the slide 28. You can show, because there is the Parenti and colleagues 2018. They addressed all these problems. They used all the data from Fabio Parenti. They compared data from the capuchin monkeys flaking with the artifacts. They compared data from the shoot, the naturally falling stones with the artifacts. All these with top-notch statistics, and the results are in the next slides. Like, you have next slides, table 4. Just the audience can. I recommend you go to the original paper, of course.
Okay.
I'm just showing here significant difference between the natural materials and the archaeological ones. Z-score is related to statistics, etc. Significant differences between the so. And then the next slide again. The proportion between Pleistocene and Holocene materials is significantly different. Z-score, blah, 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 as well. The proportion between talus, cone. So, what Melton and Adovalho published in, I don't know, 1986, now, 2018, is proved to be wrong. But I doubt they will write another paper saying that their conclusion was like too fast, like they didn't have enough data to say what
You
they
don't think
said.
so?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Anyway,
Maybe we should
by
ask
all
them
this,
and get them on underground.
actually, Dillehay said that he reconsidered his position. He wrote, I think, some lines saying that he would reconsider that. He think he was too harsh and too fast in dismissing. But anyway, I understand. Like, this is the way science goes. But on the other hand, you have to be fair enough to, after this 2018 paper, with all this evidence, to say, perhaps that's it. Perhaps.
So what does it mean? So let's assume then that these pebble tools are anthropogenic. There was a homonym of some type, likely Homo sapien, I would think, in this part of Brazil, northeast Brazil. What, 50,000 years ago? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, the oldest ages are 50,000. Yeah, because they go up to the limit of radiocarbon.
Yeah.
What it means is that doesn't mean that it was like the same people thrived, and then like they became the guys that came later. Like, could be a dead end. There's no problem
Okay.
with this. Could be like a very small migration, few people, but not so few, but like few, like enough to reach central Brazil, let's say, like northeast Brazil, and like after this, you have a lot of climate change and etc. Then you have the last glacial maximum. So it can be that these people just got extinct, because this is another dogma. Like, humans are so supersonic, so special, that once they get to some place, they just reproduce a lot, and they make all animals extinct, they take care of everything, etc. No, not necessarily true.
Right.
Like, if you have a very sparse human population, if they spread so much that they can barely meet each other, in a few generations they are over, because as you know, and the audience perhaps knows, our genetics is so similar that we cannot afford marrying with our causes.
Yeah, you need some genetic diversity, or it gets pretty ugly pretty fast. So looking at those pebble tools, is there anything? They look simple, obviously, and we've seen these kinds of tools elsewhere. But was there anything diagnostic about them that points to somewhere in the old world where these people could have originated?
Well, um, perhaps it's not coincidence that the cranial the cranial measurements pointed to Australia, Melanesia, and that's the kind of lithic industry you have there. No.
Okay, let's talk about that, because that is something, and I know that you're a geologist and archaeologist, not necessarily a physical anthropologist, so I won't hold your feet to the fire here if we start to get into a space that's not your expertise. This is, again, something that I mentioned I found fascinating when I learned about Walter Neves many decades ago, is his argument that the Fuegians, so for the people listening, these are the indigenous people of Tierra del Fuego, so the very southern tip of Argentina, living in a very frigid environment in most cases. It's just an interesting side note, as I believe they were originally coined Fuegians because, well, Tierra del Fuego, as was first observed by Magellan, I think, had huge fires. That was the land of fire. And those fires were the Fuegians building these gigantic bonfires that they used to keep themselves alive during the frigid winter months.
Yeah.
So what many, fast forward to whenever Walter started putting out his papers, probably in the early 90s, maybe, and he was talking about cranial morphological similarities between the Fuegians, the I think extinct Fuegians. I don't think any of the living, I think there were none that were living or by then, maybe a handful, but that he saw similarities with, between the Austronesians, or, Austro-Melanesians, whatever term we want to use, and the Fuegians. And I always was intrigued by that, thinking, well, did the early Australian Aborigines have some sort of watercraft that allowed them to skirt the islands and come up into, skirt the edge of Antarctica and come into Tierra del Fuego? But since I had that initial thought, I'm also hearing from other folks that no, it is this similar. It was the common ancestors, but then in fact they did make the long hike around the Bering Land Bridge and all the way down to Brazil and Argentina. So, anyways,
Yeah.
that's just my basic understanding of the kind of the arguments. What am I on point here, or what is the current thinking?
Yes. Walter's model always had to do with the Bering Passage. Always. He never proposed any trans-Pacific or transatlantic or southern transatlantic migration. Or so the idea was always like because the, to tell the audience, if we take a time machine and go to China, Japan, Southeastern Asia, a few thousand years ago, like not a lot of time, like 10,000 years ago, you wouldn't see a single person with an Asiatic appearance, no, because this is later. Like it's a population that had these features, and it seems that has to do with rice agriculture. Like they thrived, and they just took the whole the whole the whole Asia. No, so that's why you have this population, but it's kind of recent. It's there. That's very interesting. And Walter's idea is that you had previously what he called generalized morphology. So this generalized morphology would be much akin to much more akin to Australo-Melanesian people. So Australians, Papua New Guinea, no, so very different from present day Native Americans. That's the idea. We can show slide 37. I believe they have the Luzia. So this was the reconstruction of the oldest Brazilian skull called Luzia. So it was a ton. Like you have Lucy in Africa.
Yeah.
Walter gave the name like a Brazilian name that exists. That's Luzia.
Right.
That would be the translation
Okay.
of Lucy. So Walter gave this name Luzia, and this reconstruction. I don't know if it's a very good reconstruction because it was made by like very fast, just for a BBC program or something like this. So I don't know if it's very good, especially because you can see that the chin is kind of towards the front, and this is an error. This is an error. Like they put the jaw like
yeah,
in
it's a little more
place.
prognostized than it should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like don't take this reconstruction because it seems very African, and that was a problem because people started to say that Luzia was Africa, so people started to think that Luzia came from Africa. No, not at all. It's not the author's idea. But it was really hard for him to publish this in a peer-reviewed English peer-reviewed paper because nobody, like not that nobody, but several physical anthropologists in the Northern Hemisphere thought it was nonsense, impossible. No, everybody came from Asia, and they came from Asia with that features of Asian people. Not to mention that it's very recent and things like this. But next slide, I can show you one of the many skeletons found in Brazil that are related to these early Holocene populations. And so Luzia is not alone. There is a whole population of people that fits into this idea. And another thing that's important for the audience to know, the next slide, there is a huge difference in data. North America, the whole North America, have perhaps 8 early Holocene skulls to be measured.
Look at that. Yeah.
And we have 10 times this. So,
North American archaeologists are not aware of this very important statistic. This is thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, probably not. So,
we're not.
From the fossil power point of view, we have a very strong fossil power to say that no, this pattern is not only a single skeleton named Luzia. It's like 80 people. And the next slide, I believe you have the some of the statistics. And so you have this in this figure, Lagoa Santa. Sorry.
Here it is.
Yeah. You have El Santa, that is like the Lagoa Santa skeletons. And look who is closer. It's Australia, Tasmania, Easter Island. Why? Because like Easter Island has a lot of the genome of now we know that this Southeast Asia and Oceania people have a lot of genetics related to this older population, etc. So more generalized, not the fully modern Asiatic thing.
Yeah.
And then when the next slide is a very interesting paper that's kind of recent, that the fossil power is small, but then some colleagues they made a digital restoration of a very smashed cranium called the Wilson Leonard 2, very fragmentary. They made the digital restoration, and this guy, he clustered with the South American Paleoindians.
Really?
And the most distant ones were Kennewick and Bow. You know, so
Which
if you
say that last again?
You see here in the statistics that the closest crania are the Brazilian ones: Santana do Riacho, Sumidouro, Brazil; Lapa de Carrancas, Brazil; Santana Riachão, Brazil; Sumidouro, Brazil;
Yeah.
Sumidouro, Brazil. Everything in Brazil is close to this Wilson Leonard Paleoindian skull, whereas
from Texas,
yeah. Whereas the Kennewick, that is the quintessence of probably first guy in the Americas, he's off. No?
Yeah.
So this suggests very strongly that you had also in North America different people coming. And what probably happened is that the first guys to come to enter the Americas, they went all the way to South America, and a later entrance could be Kennewick.
No? Could be Kennewick, a later entrance. Yeah,
a later entrance, because it doesn't fit with the Wilson Leonard. That doesn't fit with the Lagoa Santa guys.
Yeah, well, what's interesting too is, that term generalized skull, generalized crania, is also used in North America, but it's used to describe Kennewick Man, among a handful of others of the very, very early sort of non-Asiatic appearing crania. But in your case, the generalization is referring to this Austral-Melanesian morphology, and never once have I heard, I guess that's not entirely true. I was going to say that is not commonly discussed in North America. Almost never. I have heard it maybe once or twice in the last 30 years. But, you have an amazingly robust data set. And this is the conclusion of Walter Neves and some of your other colleagues we've talked about down there as well. And so it's just, again, this sort of this failure of communication, this lack of alignment between North and South America is really on full display here. That's fascinating stuff. So, if I'm hearing you correctly, to summarize, there was some population, and let me just back up a little bit, because you said something that was interesting that, again, I think a lot of the audience doesn't realize, is that it was the explosion of rice agriculture that led to a giant population boom, where the kind of common Asiatic features that we're aware of now were probably a much smaller population group somewhere. Who knows? I don't know where. And sometime, probably in I would imagine early Holocene, that starts to really expand, and it overtakes the populations that were in place in some of those Eastern Asian countries now. And what a good example is the Ainu in Japan, which I've always found is, they refer to the Ainu as an archaic Homo sapien type population. But if you look at their cranial morphology, it's much more in line with what you're saying, that they're a generalized population. I don't think they had shovel-shaped incisors, and I don't know that they had eye folds. I don't believe they did. Much hairier body hair, very different, very different stock. And then they were replaced sometime in the mid Holocene, with populations moving in probably from Taiwan and spreading out through the Ryukyu archipelago. But this is very interesting, because it's, in my mind, what I'm hearing is that population that probably was the forebears of the Ainu and some of these other generalized populations through Asia, and again with some similarities to Australian Aborigines and Papua New Guinea Melanesians, had come up and come all the way down, perhaps as early as 50,000 years ago, maybe earlier. We don't
It
know,
it may be later because
and
we
maybe
don't know
later.
Pedra Furada, but like doesn't have to be 50,000,
Sure.
but has to be way more than 18, for God's sake.
Okay, and it doesn't have to be the Sereti Macedon folks either.
No,
Cereti,
no,
excuse
no.
me. That can be an entirely different group.
Yeah,
Do
sure.
you think? And then later in time, we have the much more kind of obvious and conventional Asian populations that come in and obviously have a massive influence on both North and South American genetics. Um, is it your belief that these tool the lithic cultures we talked about in eastern Brazil, that who were those people? Do we know genetically who they were?
Some of them, yeah. Well, there is a increasing the ancient DNA data is increasing a lot. Um, Again, like I have a slide, like it's kind of long text, but I think it's good for the audience that they can stop and read by themselves and etc. It's sorry, it's slide 43, because it's the conclusion of this paper, this 2015 paper by Skoglund and colleagues, that they make this genome wide. So it's not only Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA, it's genome wide data that shows some Amazonian Native Americans today, living Native Americans, descend partly from a Native American founding population that carried ancestry more closely related to the indigenous Australians. Woohoo!
So let me no, that's amazing. Let me go ahead, and because you said we have to be clear, this is about Amazonian Native Americans. So
Living people, living
yes.
people
Who, sorry.
who have uh, this relatedness to Australians, New Guineans, and Andaman Islanders than to any present-day Eurasians or Native Americans. This
Yeah.
signature is not present to the same extent or at all in present-day Northern and Central Americans, or in a 12.6 year Clovis associated genome. So it gets more diverse set founding populations of the Americas than previously accepted. Again, it's the same story. You have
Yeah.
probably lots and lots and lots of people coming, several waves all the time. It's not like, oh, the ice-free corridor, now we can have the first wave. No. Like, this
Right.
is going forever. And the Ceruti mastodon is a good case. Like, doesn't mean they are ancestors of
Yeah.
the later Native Americans, but means that people could come whenever they wanted, actually. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, I think
So,
what it does is it suggests that the peopling was a bit of a messy affair, which, to be
yes,
perfectly honest, is more consistent with really our understanding of human culture. It's so we want to make it simple. We want to make it linear. We want to say, 1 + 1 = 2, but in reality, people were messy back then. They're messy now. It's complicated, and I love it. It makes it much more interesting, and it provides a lot more research avenues for future archaeologists to explore.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think as time goes on, the genetics will provide a lot of helpful supporting data one way or the other.
yes, yes. But another important thing for the audience is that, like, you and I, like, we like philosophy, and philosophy is very important. Why this is so? Because again, it's not that we, of science at least, It's not that this idea, all this thing, the Walter Neves model that he calls the two components, because like he pulls it at least two. The first like Austro-Melanesian and a second Asian, okay, but can be way more. But he said about
Yeah.
the two principal morphologies. And again, this is not to make a fuss. No, we want to make it complicated, blah, 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 blah. It's just that you have data, you start to analyze, and you reach a different conclusion, and then this thing goes on. That's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. No?
It's evolving.
Yeah. And another thing, very important, ancient DNA or genetics in general, it's just another line of evidence. Some people don't realize this. They think like since genetics is made on fancy labs with fancy equipment, everybody has to wear like white clothes. So it's the
lab coat.
Lab coat is the quintessence of science. No, when you see, no, this is very scientific. So if the geneticists say this, it's this, because they are more scientists than the others. No? Nothing could be more far away from the truth. Why this is so? Because it's just another line of evidence, and it's bounded to, and it's it's constrained by the very nature of the data that is extremely fragmentary. So genetics is a very variable tool, a very important line of evidence, but it is not, and it will never be, the last word in any sense. Like the archaeological data that deals with these tools, these chronologies, and etc., is as important as genetics. And unfortunately, even archaeologists, they tend to be like, oh, the genetics will solve everything, and if the geneticists say this, so this is the truth.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not the truth. Not true at all.
Interesting. Well, multidisciplinary approach is always best. And I hear you. You being a geoarchaeologist have good perspective on that. Well, let me ask you this: what do you think the future holds? Like, where's the direction in? Let's talk about in South America and Brazil. You know, what would be a good research focus for a graduate student wanting to choose a dissertation topic?
The people of the Americas. No, I'm joking. Like
any particular aspect of it?
No, for sure. That is a very interesting topic. I think most important for any student, for anybody that is beginning in any field of knowledge, not only archaeology, but of course archaeology also, is to read a lot, to build your erudition. Now, erudition doesn't mean, oh, I have the erudition because I like classic music. No, like it's not this kind of thing. Like, erudition is kind of an elite thing. No, erudition in the sense that you have a broad scope of interests and a broad reading list. I think this is extremely important, because it really doesn't matter how many gigabytes of PDFs you have in your computer, or how powerful is your cell phone. Doesn't matter, because the connections, they have to be made inside your brain. So if you don't read the stuff, if you are not knowledgeable about things, and if you don't participate, including participate in field works elsewhere, the other places, see other landscapes, and etc. If you don't do this, the things will not connect inside your brain, and it's inside your brain that the ideas come from, not from the PDF inside the computer. So it doesn't matter which kind of field you are working. Like you have to develop a broad perspective and read stuff that sometimes is outside your immediate area. And I know that what I'm talking is very difficult because unfortunately science tends to be more and more and more specific.
Yeah.
And it's okay, like, because we need people to be really really specialists, otherwise you don't develop some areas. But for God's sake, if the person is has a broader interest, if the student likes a lot of stuff, don't feel ashamed to be one of the people who is more like a person who connects stuff from different areas. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with this. You don't have
Yeah,
to
no,
be a
I
specialist.
that's a great point. I somebody has to paint the big picture, right? We do need the generalists of the world. They play an important role. Um, and that's certainly where I've always gravitated. Anyhow, that's great advice. So let's just play a fun hypothetical. Let's say a benevolent billionaire is listening to this interview, and he's thinking, "Gosh, Astolfo has some terrific ideas. I'm going to fund his research for the next 20 years.
Wow.
Give him as much money as he wants." Uh, where do you go? Where are you going to go dig? What are you going to look for?
Well, since my present interest is more related to the people of the Americas, I think I would go towards places that most archaeologists don't look for stuff. And this makes a bridge with the Cerruti Macedon and Steve Holland's interview that you made.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think that since there is so much prejudice against old stuff and things like this, instead of avoiding the topic and say no, 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 nothing can be older than 18,000. Like the idea is on the contrary. Like let's take a look more closely to these settings where this, that, and the other guy, like, it's not only one person, like where these several different researchers are finding stuff in this chronological range. So why not go after this chronological range to see what happens, for instance?
Hmm. Good.
So
Yeah.
I think that would be, and I think, but that would be a nice thing to do in North America, because it still seems more feasible that the guys came from from Beringia. So stuff like the Cerruti Macedon, like, you are in a better position to go after this 130,000 year stuff in North America. Here in South America, perhaps I think is too old, but even
Yeah.
so, I would go after uh, Pleistocene, late Pleistocene terraces and things like this. And actually, is what we are doing here. And
Yeah.
actually, we are finding stuff. I will not make a I will not make a spoiler, but perhaps some years from now we'll talk again, and I will I will have more stuff to say about this.
All right. Well, that's a tease, ladies
Yeah,
and
yeah,
gentlemen. That means you're working on some very interesting stuff now, and I would love to
yeah.
hear about it. I mean, we could keep on going, but we're over 2 hours now, and this has just been a really really interesting conversation. It's gone a number of different directions and was a lot of fun, and I hope that folks who are listening really take into consideration the implications of what we've heard from Astolfo here. This it's very different perspective than we're typically used to getting in North America, and I think it's helpful to kind of rattle the paradigm a little bit and realize that there's still a lot left to be learned. So thank you so much. Now, I know you have a book that is for sale on Amazon. Can you
Yeah.
share the cover with the audience here?
Well, people, it's in Portuguese. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I like to write in Portuguese also, but yeah, like perhaps we will publish in English one day. It's called Towards a Skeptical Archaeology: Ontology, Epistemology, Theory, and Practice of the Most Interdisciplinary of the Disciplines. That means archaeology.
That's
So
right.
that's it. Several topics that I mentioned here are in the book.
Yep. Well, and you, of course, you also have a number of excellent research papers written in English that are easily accessible on the internet. So yeah, folks, go ahead and look him up and see what he has to say. It's a fascinating topic again, and thank you so much for your time. And folks listening, spread the word. Subscribe to Underground, please, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you, my friend. We'll see y'all soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.